The weekend left Colin all croft and bothered, but he wasn't the only one. The championship is wide open as we look back at the action from Yorkshire.
Hello and welcome back to the British Touring Car Podcast. I'm going to get a few housekeeping things out of the way. It's very warm, as some of you may or may not have noticed. We have to have the window open today, otherwise we may swelter to death.
Yes, for those who aren't aware, the podcast record room is in a attic style loft. The temperature in here at the moment is a balmy 65 degrees. That's Celsius.
Feels like Celsius, yeah.
And yeah, it is hot. So look, if there's a little bit of car noise, we're sorry, but yeah, the other option was we wait until this hot spot passes, which might be until next week, by which time we'll already be into the Knock Hill stuff. So yeah, it's hot. Bear with us. It was a hot weekend at Croft.
I was going to say, how was the weekend at Croft? Because obviously you were up there.
I was.
And it was a little bit toasty, wasn't it?
It was very, very hot at Croft. Obviously, this is the problem, if you want to call it a problem, with UK, or in fact most circuits, is they are old airfields.
Yep.
And as such, there is no shelter when it rains, there is no shelter when it's windy, and there's no shelter when it's hot. So it was a hot weekend at Croft. I will say that that's the second time I've been, and it is one of the best organised events I've been to. There was no real queue to get in the car park. I think we queued for 10 minutes, which, yeah, I'll take that.
You can accept, yeah.
Getting out, I queued longer to actually cross into the car park than I did getting out of the car park. And the whole day, actually, I thought was really, really well organised, and it's a credit. And it's interesting because obviously Croft is not an MSV circuit, or it's its own circuit in that way, and it's very, very well managed. Yes,
although not being an MSV circuit caused a little bit of controversy early on in the weekend, did it not?
It did. We'll get into that with your qualifying report. I just want to say one thing. We'll probably talk about Halstead and his lack of performance on track during this. What I will say is, off track, there was a massive Crazy Karts merch stand this weekend, where they've got really well priced, well, I'll use the word cheap merchandise, which I think when you look at some of the things, some of the costings of some of the team wear now, it is quite a barrier to fans to be able to buy the bits and pieces. I mean, I know when I started going that the team wear shirts that you sometimes see me wear were 15, 20 quid.
Now they're 40 quid a pop.
40 for polo, 30 for t-shirts. They've gone up. And again, everything's going up. I'm not having a go at Harlequin or anything like that, but what I'm saying is it was nice and refreshing to see you could buy a Crazy Karts t-shirt for 5 quid. I mean, that's, you know. So yeah, that was good. And what he's bought off track is really impressive, even if on track, not as impressive as we'll get to. But you're absolutely right.
A little lacking,
yeah. You're absolutely right. The action started on Saturday, where it didn't rain despite the weather indicating it might. Mind you, it said Sunday was going to be cloudy and around 20 degrees. So, you know, that was spot on as well from the Met Office. So that
did
was
you take
good.
Plenty of sun cream?
Well, you'll notice that I'm not particularly red. So
no.
Yeah, I did. The only thing that I've slightly back of my neck caught, but I even didn't burn on a fresh fade, which I'm quite happy about. So, yeah, we'll start the action on a dry Saturday.
So yes, Saturday qualifying, the typical Super 6 format, so the 4 sessions, 3 qualifying rounds, and there were track limits were a subject of contention, shall we say, this weekend.
The rule is stupid that they're only monitoring 2 corners, and it's even more stupid that they're being monitored by people and not machines. What I will say is that when we go on to the Jake Hill thing, Tim Harvey on the Sunday said that having watched the onboard, it probably was a track limit infringement, which is interesting in its own right, because Jake was adamant that he hadn't committed a foul. What is annoying, I think the drivers have got a real case here, is that through practice, track limits weren't being monitored. So you get used to a lot. The whole point of practice, you get your line nailed in, you get used to what you can give into a corner, what you can't give. You find the limit, hence that's what practice is for, and then come the actual competitive stuff, you then lose in your times. And actually, given that practice now has a little bit more importance because it sets the grid, or sets the groups for qualifying, track limits should, in my view, be monitored because you are affecting the qualifying.
Yeah, it's something that we harped on about last season as well. The fact that it's only being monitored in a couple of places at Croft this weekend is just mad to me.
And clearly not being monitored in the race, because coming out of the S's in the race, there
were people that had black and white flags for track limits, but no one obviously overstepped that limit enough, despite the amount of replays we saw where drivers were going out the back of the circuit well off track.
I didn't see Colin or Josh or Rob Huff get them for the moves they pulled wide through the S's. But there we go. It doesn't matter, does it? It's all good fun.
Qualifying got off to a really quick start as well. So in the first group, Ash Sutton's first quick lap time of the day, was the quali lap record. Just bang, straight in there on the pace. Yes, we do have a extra amount of hybrid this season, and we are going to, see more lap records broken.
That's strange, because if you ask Dan Camish, the car's rubbish.
Yeah. And Rowbottom actually went and beat that by 0.3, but had his track time deleted, and then again he had his next lap deleted, which would have been fast enough to get him through in the top 6 positions. However, his final lap was not good enough, and he was going to be the first major casualty in Q1A, we'll call it, along with Moffat already out again.
Yeah.
He really doesn't have any speed.
Saving tyres.
Yes, definitely. And then into Q1B, Camish had his first lap time also deleted, so the Napper's struggling with those track limits, trying to find the absolute limit. Chilton was absolutely flying though. He then set a new qualifying lap record in Q1, went through the fastest time. He most did his time, then went back to the pits and parked up for the last 3 or 4 minutes of the session. And Morgan was probably the big casualty in the second session, with also Pearson out with Osborne, although Pearson was behind Osborne, really not looking like that pace that he had early on in the season.
No, Pearson's struggling at the minute. He said so himself. He's in a difficult place at the moment, it would seem. Into
Q2 then, obviously 12 drivers in this session. Cook's first lap time was deleted in Q2, again, for track limits. Huff lost his first time. Hill lost his fastest lap, apparently wrongly, according to him. If you've seen the interview, you'll understand how apoplectic he was in the fact that he did everything perfectly and he was well within for every single lap in practice and qualifying. And
I tell you, it's annoying though, is that they made such a song and dance with it, but they never actually showed the footage on the Sunday. I mean, that footage has to exist. Well, Harvey's seen it, allegedly, so it has to exist.
The fact that we had that camera angle on Sunday showing the cars running wide at that point, which was being monitored, that camera was there for that exact reason. There was one person watching that camera to go, right, that driver's gone wide. And as you say, if Harvey's seen the footage, you can't really argue too far against it. There were thoughts at the time that maybe a car had been called incorrectly, or a driver number had been called incorrectly. But yes, he was very cross in his interview.
Yeah, he was. Let's say, without seeing it, it's very difficult for us to comment on it. We just have to rely on the stewards getting things right, which we'll get to in races, particularly race number 2. It doesn't help when you then don't see the footage yourself. You're not able to make your own mind up, which I think is a problem.
Yeah. Dobble also lost a lap time in that session. Chilton struggled for pace in this session for some reason.
He had a problem with the car, but he wouldn't tell anybody what it was. He was very guarded about this all day on Sunday, and if he was asked about it, that they developed something that he wasn't going to go into, and it affected him in race 1 and 2 as well. But.
Yeah. So Chilton, Hill, Dobble, Cook, Watson and Smiley were all out in this session, but a credit to Chris Smiley. He finished 7th and was so close to getting into that Super 6 shootout.
Great effort by a car I completely wrote off going into it.
And then we got down into the Super 6 format where Camish, Ingram, Huff, Aaron Taylor-Smith, Sutton, Turkerton would all be competing to take pole position, and it was actually Turkerton's first proper lap time, which did it for him basically. No one could beat it. Camish ended up 2nd, from Ingram in 3rd, Aaron Taylor-Smith in a very creditable 4th, along with Huff's best qualifying in the session in 5th, and Sutton in 6th.
Yeah, Huff was a real surprise because the Toyota, I mean, Cook felt that they got set up wrong and it cost him, but actually Watson and Moffat were nowhere all weekend, actually, as we'll come to. Yeah, Huff really did surprise me. He looked on it this weekend.
We both sort of mentioned in the preview that the Toyotas we thought were going to be, thereabouts. But Huff was a real nice surprise this weekend. And I think he said that the team had been doing a lot of work in the mid-season break over the 4 weeks, taking weight out of the car, which was quite interesting, working out where the weight balance is in the car, as well as a couple of new bits developed and put onto the car, including a new exhaust system. But yeah, we'll get into the races on Sunday now.
Race 1 then, and the biggest thing to decide going into this race was what tyre were people going to use, because this weekend we had the soft and we had the hard. Obviously race 1 is a free choice,
Yep.
And then in race 2 those who finish in the top 10 have to use the hardest tyre available to them. If they've already used the hard tyre, then the hardest tyre available to them is the soft. The top 6 you'd have thought would have all gone for softs, however...
I thought it was going to be a lot more than that.
Yeah, I did.
I was quite surprised and taken aback when we saw, obviously, them coming to the grid, that all but 7 of them, all but 7 of them were on hard tyres.
Yeah, and I think that the one that shocked me the most was Rob Huff, because obviously he'd done so well to get into the top 6, and actually Chris Smiley, actually, for the same reason, because he was 7 before. That's an interesting thing. But Huff had said that he believed that the heat would reduce the deficit between the tyres, which wasn't quite true.
This isn't the first time that we've seen Huff take this strategy
No.
either. He did it at Stetson as
Yep,
well,
yep.
and it paid off for the team there. And I think they've learned from that and have gone forward that the less amount of drivers on the soft tyre in that first race, the more benefit you get throughout the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, I don't know like how late they can put the choice in. Do they get to see what other people do first, or is it all at the same time?
They have to make the choice before they leave the pit lane to go to the grid.
So they could potentially see what people are doing left and
Yeah.
right. I also think if you're Huff, you gamble that the people in front of you are going to take softs.
Yeah.
So
To make the most of
exactly
the position.
So he did. It paid off, as you say, that so many other people took hards. The people who started with softs, as you say, the front 5.
Front 4, obviously
Huff
Huff
was fifth.
was
Sorry,
5th,
apologies. Yeah.
Sutton in 6th,
Yeah.
Hill in 11th, and most importantly, Housestead.
This is bizarre. the house one is. I don't know
Yes,
if
it
it's
is.
started kicking it already. That is bizarre.
It is.
Get it off out of the way now and hope
Yeah.
and try and make pace. Try and go forward on the softs the rest
Yeah.
of the race.
I agree.
Yeah, bonkers.
If you're starting at the
Bonkers
back,
good.
you haven't got any.
You have to go softs.
You haven't got any further to go back,
Yeah, you have to go softs for the first. Sorry, you have to
No,
go
have to go hards,
Get them out
yeah.
of the way. Yeah.
and then you're left with the
Softs
softs for the
today,
rest
yeah.
of the weekend.
Knowing-
It was a mad decision.
Knowing that at least 6 drivers, if not more,
Yeah.
are going to have to take the hards. Yeah, bonkers cool. The Hill one was interesting. Harvey will get very angry with him in race 2. I think Hill is in the impossible position here because you've got to try and make up yesterday. You have 3 title rivals all ahead of you and going to be vying for a podium. Okay, you're not so far ahead. Yeah. There's enough time left that it doesn't matter if you don't get in front of them. However, you've kind of got to try and make up some ground from yesterday.
I think that's why he knew he had ground to make up, which is why he's gone for that soft
Yeah.
in race 1. But the fact that only 6 others have gone on the soft.
Yeah, but he would have known that Colin was going to be on the soft.
Yeah.
And he would have known or have gambled that Camish, Sutton and Ingram would have all gone softs as well.
Yeah.
So actually, he might as well go softs, knowing they'll all be on hard next race, and there'll be no difference between the car, and he can fight them with equal machinery.
The thing is, with what happened in race 2, which we'll get onto, hindsight
Yeah, but
is a wonderful thing, which Harvey got onto about, I wouldn't have, I've gone for the hard in race 1. You only know that because of now what's happened
Exactly.
in race 2.
And actually, Rowbottom, who started on the hard in race 1, made incredible progress through the field.
Decent progress.
A Croft is difficult to overtake at.
Yeah, can be.
And with cars that were either on soft, on hard, hard tyres as well, I thought he did pretty well. I know you don't, want to give him too much praise. Anyway, there were the tyre choices. To be honest with you, that's probably as much as we need to say about race 1. It's pretty dull. Lights the flag for Colin Turkson, off the line well. As you'd expect, the softs went off into the distance and the hards fell back through the field.
Yeah, Ingram managed to get past Camish fairly early on. Camish had to take to one side of the chicane while Ingram went through the normal racing line. Hill had a decent start because he was on those softs and managed to get up to, I think, 9th by the end of lap 1. But I thought he then struggled to make progress quickly. It was sort of like a car a lap that he would get past until he got to that top 6.
In mitigation, he had to pass Chilton, Huff,
Cook.
They're not easy drivers to pass.
No, I'll take that.
And Chilton is a very difficult driver to pass. You don't quite know what Chilton's going to be there, do you? I think
certainly didn't in race 2.
No, as we'll get to it. So no, I think you're right. But I also think that Hill couldn't afford to take any chances, and those cars weren't doing what the cars in race 2 were then doing, which was letting people by. Huff did let Hill through actually, but Chilton and Cook made it slightly harder.
Yeah.
Huff did for him. We didn't in race 2. We saw basically even put the indicators on, but we'll get to that. I thought Sutton was quite feisty in trying to come through the field here. Elbows out a little bit, bit raggedy. He did say going into the weekend that he's now got a mental spreadsheet which he knows what points he has to score relative to everybody else, which seems an awful lot of.
He really wasn't willing to share that with Louise, though, was he?
No, it's just an awful lot of mental maths to be doing whilst also trying to drive a car around a circuit. But yeah, he did say that the old Sutton was going to come out a little bit. We'll have to see if that pays off for him. I'm not sure it will, personally. I think this year's championship will be won by a steady hand, and actually I think Camish is starting to gather real momentum, as we'll get to in our closing thoughts. DeLyon got a time penalty of 10 seconds, presumably for being out of position or jumping the start. They didn't even get to the right number, so we're not sure what the actual reasoning was. Then the race sort of settled down into a fairly dull procession until Osborne decided that he was going to try his hand at rallycross, which he didn't do particularly well.
He's done a bit of lorry driving this year.
Losing on his own at Sunny, a jackknife for Laurie who was doing that. Lost it on his own at Sunny. I'm really starting to lose patience with Osborne, I have to say. I'm getting fed up with it. Because everything is set up for him to succeed.
Yeah.
Everything is set up for him to succeed.
He is getting more Stroll-esque, isn't he? More Lance.
I was going to say Perez, personally.
Yeah, the fact that it's his dad's team and he's still there because it's his dad's
team. But in
terms
of what you've got there to succeed, this is almost Perez levels of you've got a front-running car.
Yeah.
All the other drivers in that team have got a podium.
Yep.
And you're so far off it.
Yeah.
And those sort of mistakes are just silly. Cook, I want to introduce a debate because we like debates.
Go on then.
Meatball flags have been a bit contentious this year, haven't they? With Napa sort of making changes to the rear of the car to make sure they don't flap open again.
They've certainly used an extra few self-tappers to keep those rear bits of bodywork.
And it seems to work, because in race 2, or was it race 3? Race 3, Colin did biff the back of Sutton a couple of times, and those arches did not go anywhere. Nope. So, Cook had a flappy fuel latch, which isn't used for fuel in touring cars, it's used for the air jack. Yep. Should that have been a meatball flag?
No,
it shouldn't have been. But based on this new directive of any flapping bodywork is going to be now. Let me just play devil's avocado.
Go on.
I'm a millennial, nearly. Had that flicked off and flown backwards into an air intake, Sam.
It wouldn't have done.
But it could.
It's the fact that it is already a hinged part. It's a very small...
A bonnet is a hinged part, but if that flaps up, it's...
I thought you were going to go for a door.
Yeah, that is also a hinged part.
Yeah.
Look, I agree with you, it's not a meatball flag. It shouldn't. But based on how stringent and how they've been with the directive this year, I'm slightly surprised he got away with it. I'm glad common sense prevails.
Yes.
But I think if you're Sutton or Smart, or even Cook, who had a bit of flappy bodywork earlier in the season, you'd be a bit aggrieved. Cook wouldn't be aggrieved with himself, but you'd be a bit aggrieved about the give. So what now constitutes flapping bodywork and what doesn't? Because there's supposed to be a zero tolerance, and I'm going to get to this in a bit further in a moment as well. Because actually, that comes in race 2. I'll pick that up in race 2.
No worries.
Towards the end of the race, Sutton half-heartedly start to challenge Camish for third. Filled his wing mirrors a couple of times.
Closed in a bit, didn't he?
Waved a little bit, and then sort of that gave up. Then the only final bit of action from the race is that Smiley went off at Sunny, which is a real shame because he'd been having a good race up until that point. He did, in his defence, have power steering issues.
Yeah, he had dropped down a little bit through the field, which we kind of expect in a race trim. But yeah, the fact that he had that big slide there just was a shame, and it kind of set the rest of his weekend. It could have been a hell of a lot better if it weren't for that, I think.
It did keep me alive in my Osborne prediction, as we'll get to later on.
But yeah, it was a lights to flag victory with it. It's kind of what we saw Colin do at Brands earlier this year. Yeah. And I thought, oh God, are we going to see another...
Well, I never thought that, because the fact Huff hadn't started and he kept his position
within
sort of that top 7.
Yeah.
I said to Naja, who I was with, I said, he will win race 2. And I
Yeah.
wasn't quite right,
No.
but I said he was going to
Close
do it.
enough,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Because and that gave me a little bit more hope that it wasn't going to be another license flag in race 2.
Do you know what was also quite disappointing is the fact that that penalty for De Leon, the 10-second penalty, dropped him out of the points, and he was racing quite consistently and easily with Watson and Dobble up for about 12th for most of that race.
Yeah,
and holding his own.
He looked really good this weekend.
One thing I must say is that the Toka engines have had a little turn up on the boost over the summer break, which is why I think we're seeing a little bit of upturn in pace from them.
Yeah, same for PMR as
Yes.
well. Taylor Smith was a little bit quicker than... I was saying I wouldn't have expected him to got through to top 6 qualifying.
No.
If you told me that beforehand.
Yep.
Okay, so the final, or top 10 for race number 1, it was Colin Turkington from Tom Ingram from Dan Camish, Sutton 4th, Aaron Taylor Smith in 5th, Jake Hill getting through to 6th, Rob Huff 7th, and would be the first car to start on soft tyres for race 2, Josh Cook 8th, Tom Chilton 9th, Dan Rowbottom 10th. So Rowbottom did pretty well. Come to be top 10.
Yeah, it was a shame that he wasn't further up in qualifying, obviously, for your prediction as well. But he showed throughout the weekend that he had some decent pace there as well.
Absolutely. That race win for Colin made that 15 at Croft for him, which is by far the most wins at a circuit, or that circuit,
Yep.
and 70 overall. So not bad stats.
I think
for
it was
Colin.
something like 120 odd for WSR as well.
127, I think,
Yeah.
from memory. I haven't noted that one down though. Which also, I mean, Colin's won most of those as WSR as well. So you'd say he's probably taken a good 55 for WSR, which isn't bad.
No. We'll move straight on to race 2 now. Getting into race 2 then, and as we mentioned, the top 6 drivers would all be starting on the hard tyre, with the top starter on softs being Rob Huff. Expecting them to fall through the field, were you?
Yeah, I was, and actually, I'll ask you a question now, but I think we're going to take it away and do a 10 minutes with. But
Yeah.
I think this race really did highlight that you probably don't need the hybrid and the tyre regs. One or the other's probably enough, and I think that the disparity between the two tyres was far too great this weekend.
I think that point was raised in commentary, or by Paul O'Neill, in the fact that is having both of them together too much. But it certainly does shake the order up, which I kind of think that's what Gal wants.
Yeah, but does it make it too gimmicky when you've basically
Possibly.
this race divided into two classes, your hards and your softs?
Yeah.
Now, maybe the answer is that you have softs and mediums rather than have such a gap between the tyres. And you can then keep the hybrid. I think, as you say, what we'll do is we'll pick that. We've got another couple of breaks in the season.
Yeah.
After Knock Hill in particular, so we'll pick up.
I've had many thoughts on how could be best to do it, but yeah, I think a 10 minutes with later on in the season,
Yeah.
once we've seen a couple of variations with the hard, medium, and soft together
Yeah,
and stuff
yeah.
like that, will be the best place to pick that
I'll
up
pick
on.
that up then.
Turkerton had a good start, but Ingram managed to get him early down at Tower.
Yeah, bold and brilliant.
Yeah, he Colin said it on the grid, I think. He normally, by the time he got down to Tower, the front tyres were just gradually getting warm enough. So Ingram knew that he had to strike quickly, and that's certainly what he did. Hill was down to 9th on the first lap. He had
Yeah, force wide at turn 1.
Yeah, but you'd expect him to have a fast start, I know, on the
Well,
hard tyres.
He did, and then he got.
But then he got biff wide.
Well, he was running wide and couldn't get back in. Basically, he
Yep.
tried to go around the outside of people, who then moved over, and he got pushed through the gravel, which biffed him out wide and shuffled him back down the order. His start was pretty good, and Ingram's start was pretty good as well, albeit slightly on the grass.
Yes. Consequently, he would then go on to battle a little bit with Chilton, which we'll get on to a little bit later. Sutton managed to get past Camish on lap 2.
Oh, there was a bit of battering door handles there, wasn't there?
It was a robust pass, wasn't it? Which is something that we
Yeah.
might see a little bit more from Sutton this season.
I think we're going to see a
Teammate war.
Shed and Neil moment at some point
Okay.
between these two, because
Okay.
they're both very much in the title fight.
Yes.
This time, of course, last year we were seeing team orders in effect at Croft
Yeah.
with the moving out the way for one another. We're not going to see that this season. This could be very, very interesting.
No, I think the fact that they haven't got that massive advantage over the Hyundais and the BMWs like they had last season they can't really afford to do that now, can they?
No, they need to find a way to work together while still competing in their own championship. Otherwise, they're going to hold each other up.
Yeah.
And particularly when you've got people like Tom, who's I think Hyundai's got the greatest chassis on the grid this season, and I think BMW, Hill's BMW in particular, has got power that for some reason Colin doesn't seem to quite have. But yeah.
Rob Huff was up to 4th by the end of lap 2, and he was pretty quick at that early stage. We kind of knew he was going to be the first driver to make moves, but Cook and Rowbottom were trying to follow him through. Sutton and Turkington then got together down into Tower. Now, the first real incident of the race
weekend
for me. From my point of view, it looks as if Turkington's braked a little bit earlier than Ash was expecting. Both were well on the inside, Turkington defending from Sutton, and just as Sutton's moved out as Turkington's braking, he clipped the back of him. Sending Turkington on the grass straight on over the corner, was lucky not to hit Huff.
Yeah, very much so.
And managed to rejoin back on the track with not too much drama, but did lose a chunk of positions.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll read you what the steward said in a moment.
That makes a change.
I think that, on the replays, it does look like Colin brakes very early for the corner. It does look that way. Obviously, we don't get to see the data that the stewards do. And it looks like Sutton has tried to jink out of the way, been caught out by the early braking, and has then gone into the back of him. Now, what the steward said is as follows. Following an incident, an incident, in round 17, following Ashley Sutton and Colin Turkington, the BTCC clerk and driving standards advisor interviewed both drivers, reviewed the video evidence, and decided to take no further action. Team BMW appealed that decision to the BTC stewards. Following a hearing, the BTCC stewards upheld the BTCC clerk's decision, and the appeal failed. The appeal fee was forfeit. So, obviously, we don't get to see the data, as I say. We don't get to see all the camera angles. We don't get to see the documents that are in the meeting. I think that Sutton has... Personally, I think he's got away with one here. Even though that...
It's clumsy.
Yeah, even if Colin has braked early, I don't think it counts as a brake check, personally. I think it's... Sutton hasn't reacted quick enough. Potentially.
For me, I don't think Sutton needed to be so far across and so close behind. If Turkington's taking that defensive line... If I'm in Ash's position, I'm on the other side of the circuit waiting to get the cutback coming out that corner. Yeah,
slightly complicated with that Huff is there or thereabouts.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, as you say, I think a clumsy accident is probably the best way to although you don't like using the word accident because it implies there's nobody to blame. But yeah, I'd say it's a clumsy come together, and I'm surprised Ash has got away without any penalty in that.
So am I.
But I can also kind of just about understand why he hasn't.
Yeah, that put Turkington down to 8th at this point. And then on lap 5, Cook managed to get through up to 3rd, having set the fastest lap as well. He was on a real charge, trying to follow Huff through and really take the race to him, because we knew that those first couple of soft drivers that were coming through were going to be the ones battling for the victory in the end.
Yeah, Huff was through to the race lead at Tower on lap 5 as well, so as you say, Cook had to make sure he kept his skates about him to keep the pace.
Yeah, Cook then passed Ingram a lap later. Same place, yeah. And then a lap later from that, Rowbottom did exactly the same thing. And at this point, Ingram was practically just letting them through on the inside, wasting the least amount of time, basically.
I did quite the fact that Cook put on his hazards to thank him afterwards. I mean, it's always nice to see a little bit of mutual respect between the drivers on the grid, isn't it? And Ingram basically said in the lead up to race 3, he was literally indicating to let people come by, because, as he said, there's no point fighting and ruining your race about it. You're still the best you're still ahead of all your championship rivals. All you're going to do is slow yourself down. They're quicker, they're over a second quicker on that tyre, just let them go and you know.
The fact is, you might as well sit in their wake and try and gain a little bit more speed when they're in front of you.
Well, also, you know that they're going to be battling for the lead. If they take each other off, you're going to be laughing as you go through anyway. So just let it all play out. You never know what's going to happen with Rowbottom, do you?
No, you certainly don't. Pearson's poor weekend, I would say, was sort of like made a little bit worse, I suppose. the fact that he had to come into the pits, he looked like he had some sort of issue at the front. I don't know whether he'd been off, didn't see any sort of replay, but they were in around that front arch area. I don't know whether they were cleaning grass out or whether there was a bigger issue there.
Yeah, I kind of felt the summer came at the right time for Pearson to reset. It's been a difficult second half of the first half of the season, second quarter of the season, I would say. Hopefully he can bounce back at his home circuit next time out.
And then a little bit randomly, Watson just lost 3 places on lap 8. All I saw was him drop down the timing tower on the left-hand side. Got no replay.
I have a feeling
But everyone was in really close proximity to each other in that group.
I have a feeling De Leon was involved, only because an incident. This is a sort of an impromptu penalty corner, but it's all flowing nicely, like the corners at Croft do. An incident involving Andrew Watson and Darryl De Leon in round 17 will be investigated by the BTCC clerk at the Knockhill Championship meeting. Okay. So I'd imagine, obviously it was quite a succinct timetable at Croft on Sunday, and with respect to Watson and De Leon, they're focused on the championship contenders, which makes sense in getting that resolved ASAP, which makes sense.
But that dropped him down to 15th on lap 8. And then probably the most controversial incident of the weekend, shall we say?
Yeah, I think so.
Came up when, as I said earlier, Chilton and Hill were banging doors, battling, and it all came to a head when Chilton was down the inside of Hill.
Well, you say down the inside. At
sunny in, sunny out, and certainly made the gap a hell of a lot bigger.
For me, the door's never open. It's not really open for me.
Okay.
No.
Consequently, Hill spins off and is backwards into the barrier, but is able to then carry on. Drops him down to 18th, completely out of contention for any points.
Should have probably had a meatball flag because bits of bodywork, including a wing mirror, were flapping, and that came off and went through some of his windscreen.
On my notes, I've got Chilton at fault for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, where he hits...
He's not far enough down the inside.
Where he hits Hill is just beyond the rear wheel into sort of the back passenger... Sorry, the rear door, as it were. You're not far enough down the inside to be... Yeah, not at all.
I'm amazed that no decision...
Well, let me just go...
was fully made on this before the start of race 3.
Well, let me just read you the exact words. Following an incident in round 17 involving Tom Chilton and Jake Hill, the BTCC clerk and driving standards advisor interviewed both drivers, reviewed the video evidence, and decided to take no further action. Laser Tools Racing of MB Motorsport appealed that decision to the BTC stewards. Following a hearing, the BTCC stewards upheld the BTCC clerk's decision, and the appeal failed. The appeal fee was forfeit. I don't even with data, and going back to what I said about the Sutton and Turkington one, we don't get to see the data. I don't see what data could have changed this outcome. I really don't. It's an over-ambitious move. The only thing I could think of, and this is, if this is what's happened, it's bonkers, is they've gone, well, you're banging door handles for the last 4 laps, you should have, one of you should have relented. This is always going to end in cheers. Which seems, if that is what's been said, and that's complete speculation on my part, is madness.
It is, yeah.
And I also thought Tim Harvey blaming Jake Hill for taking the quote the wrong tyre in race 1, and then not just letting Chilton by in race 2 because he was on a different tyre. Yes, Chilton's on softs, but you think he was around the start.
Chilton was actually struggling to make progress.
Well, he was around Huff, Cook, and Rowbottom at the start. They're leading the race now, and he's back in 8th, 9th. Chilton. So why should Hill let Chilton through? Yeah. I thought Harvey was completely out of order on that personally. And I think that even if you make the point about getting the tyre strategy wrong in race 1, it's not a fair punishment that you get biffed into the barriers in race 2 because of it, is it? I mean, that's how's that an event?
The thing that compounded it the most for me is the fact that the reverse grid draw, which we'll get into, then puts Chilton on pole, and obviously, if you already watched, he goes on to win race 3.
Well, I assume that this was done before race 3 because the timestamp suggests it was. The timestamp suggests it was done at 14:35, I believe.
Right.
You keep talking while I bring this up.
Well, Cook was closing in on Huff at the front. Morgan then had a spin at the exit of Tower, as a result of what looks like a left rear puncture, which he then cut across, went into the pits, lost several laps, and was right down at the back for the start of race 3. Cook then pushes through out the back of the circuit, which was a harem-scarum kind of move.
This man has big cojones.
And I think the only reason that this went without major incident is the fact that the two of them are teammates, effectively.
Agreed.
And I think Huff even said that because he was my teammate, I allowed him a hell of a lot more room than I would have allowed anyone else.
Just to cycle back,
Yep.
you were right, the decision wasn't made until 10-6, which is before, which I also wonder if that's focused a little bit on the decision, because it's a little bit of egg on the face, because if they, yeah. That one I can't get my head around, and I think I'd love to see what they've seen to make that decision. And I can understand from what Paul O'Neill was saying that Jake Hill was not very happy, and on that occasion,
I don't think he's been very happy the whole weekend.
No, but on that occasion I can sympathise.
Yes, certainly. So yeah, Cook did eventually manage to get past on Huff, completed the move into Sunny Inn, and then Smiley came into the pits. For no apparent reason.
Engine problem,
was it? Okay. We weren't told anything while
no, I've checked
watching.
socials today.
That's fine.
Just go back to the Huff Cook overtake. Obviously, both run wide.
Yes.
Should that not be a track limit? Should Cook have to give the place back because he's gained an unfair advantage potentially by leaving? This is where, and this is a real quirk of Croft. I can't think of another part of the UK where we race like this. Maybe Cops Corner through Silverstone.
Silverstone is exactly what came to mind.
But they are very, very hot on track limits for Cops.
Yeah.
Very hot through there.
I think also Cops has a hell of a lot more room on the track itself.
Yeah.
For two cars.
But
side
normally
by side.
you'd expect where that runoff is, there to be gravel. You think of Knock Hill, there's a couple of places of Knock Hill which are not too dissimilar, where there was a gravel track on the outside where Colin dropped it a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And I understand why there's not a gravel track there, because it's a quick part of the circuit. That is a very fast part of the circuit, and you do not want a car digging in on the gravel, because you're going to have to sound like Paul, one hell of an accident through there. But it's a quirk of Croft that you can basically double the circuit.
Extend. Track extend.
And this will then come into play in race 3, as we'll get to in a moment as well. For me, I don't think they should have to give the place back, but I am surprised they don't enforce track limits through that part of the circuit in the race, because
I think the fact that the two drivers at the speed you're going through that area, that you can get two drivers side by side through the Jim Clark S's.
Yes, just
you have to then allow them the room to run wide because of the momentum that they're carrying. Otherwise, as you say, there is going to be a hell of an accident.
But the flip side the other way is that it gives the driver who's gone wide no sort of reason to come out of it, to brake or to pull out of the move and get back on the circuit.
But they're already on the outside, probably going to lose their position, because the next corner after that is Sunny Inn, which is a right-hander.
Or there's contact.
Yes.
Did you? While I was looking for the bits and pieces online, did you mention Morgan's puncture?
Yes, I did.
You did. Okay.
Yes, he that kind of came out of nowhere, really, and then he found it when turned in at Tower, much to his disappointment.
I think that is pretty much race 2, isn't it? Have you got anything else to...
So the top 3 were all fairly close together with a couple of laps left, but it was Cook to go on and take his 20th career win from Huff and then Rowbottom, and Ingram was the best hard finisher from Sutton and then Camish.
Yeah, riding at your top 10, Aaron Turner-Smith 7th, which was another good score for him, Tom Chilton in 8th, Colin Turkerton recovering to 9th, and Aidan Moffat making an appearance in the top 10.
Yeah, and then Cook would go on to pull ball 8 out of the pot, which would consequently, as we've mentioned, put a certain Mr. Tom Chilton onto pole position.
And this is, before we go on to race 3, this is the problem with the decision making. Again, I get with the really restricted timetable and the fact that there was only the same people that would have decided Chilton and Hill would have had to decide Turkington and Sutton. It's the same people. It's not a massive team, so you can only really hear one incident at a time. The Sutton Turkington one was decided at 25 or 35 minutes past 4, so that would have been in time for race 2 just.
Yeah.
This is the problem, as you say, because realistically, Chilton probably should have had. Well, I think he should have had a time penalty. Obviously, the stewards disagree, which would have then put probably Turkington on pole. And then does Turkington avoid what happens in race 3 if he's on pole?
What I do wonder is the decision is set to come at Knock Hill for what should happen. Surely.
No, it's been.
Well, that's what was said on TV.
Yeah, but in fairness to Tim Harvey, at the time, the Sutton Turkington one would have just been literally just finished, and the Hill Chiltern one wasn't decided till 10-6, by which point touring cars is finished. So in fairness to Harvey, he wouldn't have known that.
No, that's fair.
To be fair,
but you can't then retrospectively punish Chiltern going into the next event if that was going to be the case.
Well, but you can, because we've seen it before.
Well, it doesn't strike me as fair.
No, I agree, because if you say to Chiltern, and obviously this is now pure speculation, okay, you keep the race win, because there's nothing we can do about it from race 3, but you get a 3-place grid job for not kill.
It's fine.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, that's no problem. Unless you're doing business with you, see you next time.
I'll keep my trophy, thank you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You know, with respect for somebody like Chiltern, who's not in the championship battle, he'll take that all day long. He'll take a 20-place grid penalty and keep his win.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think it's a byproduct of a tight timetable more than anything else.
It is, unfortunately. But we shall get straight into race 3 now.
Yeah, so race 3 then, and it was Chiltern who led off the line very well, got a very good start, which is always important. Ingram managed to sort of push his way into third straight off the off. Elbows out from Tom Ingram.
I don't know whether it was a combination of a slightly slow start from both the Napa Fords, or whether they were just caught sleeping, napping, pardon pun. But yeah, he made hay.
While the sun was shining.
While the sun was shining.
And the Fords were nappering, as you say. Oh, that's terrific. Turkington was also getting very, very feisty in the opening few laps of this race, bashing into Sutton at the hairpin, just testing the structural stability of these offenders, just making sure, doing a good job for Napa, making sure they've done what they need to do.
Giving him one back for last race, I think it might have been more seen as.
Yeah, if you look at Colin Turkington's Instagram, I think it's fair to say, or any of his socials actually,
not best pleased.
I don't think he agrees with the stewards' decisions either. ATS was the real victim really of the opening few laps. He was sort of shuffled down and roughed up.
Yes, yeah, he was. Although on lap 1, I was quite surprised by how many positions Sutton lost as well.
Yeah.
Yes, I know he got roughed up by Turkington, but he was 8th at the end of lap 1.
Yeah, he was. He didn't have the greatest opening lap, and Camish was able to get into second early on because Ingram decided that him and Aaron Taylor Swift were going to go and continue their race in Darlington, and as such, Camish was able to nip by the pair of them, which was opportunistic from Camish and what he's been good at all season and all his career, to be fair.
Yeah.
I don't want to repeat myself from race 2. It's an odd quirk. I do think Ingram's slightly optimistic of how far him and Taylor Swift ended up going off the circuit between each other. But
I mean, the fact is, Camish got through on both of them, so it didn't really. There was no benefit for him.
I just think if you're fighting for a championship, do I want to be going side by side with Aaron Taylor Smith through the S's and then to that part of the circuit? No, is the answer. No, I don't think I do.
That's fair enough.
Turkington would then pass Huff with help from a tap. I mean, this was very much an elbow. We've criticised Colin a lot for not being able to race with a bit of aggression, not to be able to pick his way through a field, potentially trying to always do the cleanest of overtakes.
Yeah.
Here was a very much wham bam, thank you ma'am, tap up the rear, through.
It was a very typical mid-2000s move, wasn't it?
Yeah, nothing wrong with it, by the way. I think it was a perfectly fair move.
It's something that Huff would have been used to when he was first in the championship.
Yeah, we then saw 2 problems further back. Moffat with an issue and into the pits. Puncture.
Yep.
And DeLyon with another 10-second penalty for a false start, which is...
Do you know what was so disappointing? He was up to 10th at this point, and I thought, hang on, this is a really good weekend for him. It's a shame that he got that in race 1. But he was doing well.
He was off Jack Sears win.
On pace, yeah, exactly. And then to get it in race 3 as well, just those little finite details would have made for a really, really good weekend for him.
Toyota had further problems with Watson, who entered the pits on lap 4 with an issue. Yeah, Moffat, it was a tale of 2 halves for Toyota this weekend, wasn't it? Cook and Huff had a really good weekend. Moffat and Watson were dreadful, and I think it's flying under the radar a little bit, Watson's debut season at Toyota, because it's not been particularly strong so far. No,
he did manage to get back out, but he was 4 laps down. They're having a look in the boot at different bits and pieces, so I'm not quite sure 100% what the issue was.
We then saw Sutton show his car control, which we've not seen for a while. Huff hit him very hard. In fairness, Huff did say that if there was a teammate, it wasn't his teammate on the outside of here in race number 2, then he'd probably end up putting him on the grass, and he very much did that with Sutton.
All credit to Huff, though.
Yes.
He didn't take advantage of it, and he held back without taking that position, which I think Sutton's willing to take.
Yeah, good gentleman racing between the two of them, as you say. Huff very much did the right thing, and that helps him not get a penalty further down the line.
Yes.
He's not getting an advantage, and you kind of accept that contact will happen in this sport. An excellent save from Sutton, I have to say. Really, really
absolutely buried the throttle.
Yeah, lights up the tyres and gets himself back on circuit. As you say, just ended up being one of those things. Then the next sort of big incident was Colin and Ingram. I'm going to use the FIA line here in a moment once I've described the action. So both side by side through the S's.
Are you on about that first bit? I was going to go back because they had a little to do at the hairpin.
They did have a little to do at the hairpin. They did. Yeah. And take us back.
Turkington had one of those little nudges that he put on earlier in the race up the inside of the hairpin, but he was on the outside by the time he got down to turn 1, so didn't manage to keep the position. But as you say, we've mentioned about Turkington not really having that feisty side to him.
I think the red mist was well and truly down by this point. Don't forget, he'd have come to the grid knowing that Sutton's got away with one, and I think he has got away with one. Yeah, I think the red mist was down, and then they would go side by side through, sort of from Tower onwards. Really, they were side by side through the S's. Turkington runs wide out onto the bumpier section.
As does Ingram.
To sunny in, sunny out. Ingram's car's unsettled. They make contact.
Yeah, there's another small little kink where they cut across the grass.
Yeah.
And from the only replays that I've seen, certainly, the car looks like it does get unsettled.
Yeah.
Which puts them into side-to-side contact. On my notes, I've got racing incident ? Because I think it's a bit of one, bit of another.
Well, I'm going to use the...
And if you're on the outside...
Yeah,
you're normally going to be the person that loses out.
I'm going to use the FIA line from Max and Lewis at Hungary.
Yeah.
That both could do more to avoid contact.
Yeah.
And I think that's about, to read the official, there was
a dramatic ending to it in the fact that Turkington was off into the barrier, quite a lot of front end damage, but was able to get back onto circuit.
Yeah.
And actually still got points at the end.
It was quite lucky in a way. I mean, depends how you define luck, but it was more of a side swipe of the barrier rather than going in head first or rear first. Following an incident in round 18 involving Colin Turkington and Tom Ingram, the BTCC clerk and driving standards advisor has interviewed both drivers, reviewed the video evidence and decided to take no further action. And it appears that BMW haven't appealed this decision, which in itself I think is quite telling.
Yes.
Given that they appealed the other two.
They'd already lost out on quite a lot of money by that point.
Well, there is that. That was decided at 7:20, so I mean, they could have appealed it since we've just not had that paperwork come through.
Yeah.
However, if they haven't appealed it, to me that's quite telling. That I think that deep down they will probably... And actually the reaction in the garage is really interesting. Because they cut to the garage on the TV pictures when he went into the wall with Colin's dad.
Yeah.
There was no sort of, oh my God, anger or anything like that. It kind of felt like sometimes they go for you, sometimes they don't kind of thing.
No, watch out Ingram.
Yeah, I think that Tom has got a lot more aggressive this year. I think that is fair to say. But I don't think this was an intentional move by Ingram. I think that, as I say, both could have done more to avoid contact. Colin has got a choice. He can come out of it.
Yeah.
He's been run off the circuit. He can take his foot off and get back on behind Tom. They both decided they're going to carry on side by side. I think once you do that and you carry on the move, as it were, you've got to accept there will be consequences. There might be consequences.
And also something that I hadn't thought about at the time. It was Turkington trying to make the pass on Ingram.
Yeah.
Ingram can just go, well, I was holding my ground.
Yeah, he's held his line.
So,
arguably, although you could also argue he's not left enough space and pushed Colin off the track.
Yeah.
As I say, I think both could do more here.
Yeah.
Which is why I think neither have been punished, because you can squabble about this to the early hours. I don't think either of them has done anything so wrong that they're to blame. I don't think you can push it into 55-45 territory. I think this really is a 50-50 that both can control better.
Yeah.
But of course, this weekend has effectively killed off any chance that Colin had of a title, in my opinion.
Looking tricky now.
Yeah, I don't see it now.
Yeah. Hill was up to 5th by this point.
Yeah, good race for him.
And was on a good charge. He was obviously fighting back from the issues that he found himself in. as a result of race 2, but was certainly fighting through the field and was quick.
We were then treated to silly racing, or whatever you want to call it. What was that? What was Dastardly in Dick Dastardly in Wacky Races?
Wacky
Races between the two PMR boys who decided that they'd all had too much fun or too much, all been too nice to each other, and we're going to proceed to try and take each other out. I imagine Adam Weaver was just in the garage, just seething at this point.
Can I apologise for this? Because I made the prediction that both of them were going to get a top 10 finish,
Yes,
and I thought at this point they were sitting 10th and 11th. I was like, come on, one person just drop out and give me the point.
You wouldn't have got the point. You said double top 10 finish.
Yeah. So they were 10th and 11th at that point. If someone had dropped out of the top 10, they would have been 9th and 10th.
Oh, okay.
And I would have taken that, but then they decided to bang doors and everything with each other.
Yeah, they were side by side for the S's. They would then, again, very similar to Ingram and Turton, run wide. DeLine, I think, got the final tap on Doe. Well, in fairness to DeLine, he had nowhere to go because those two were just messing about, basically.
Yeah.
Which is why there's, at the time of recording, no penalty pending or no investigation pending for DeLine. Where's he supposed to go with these two being Pratts, basically? And I'm going to use the word Pratt, your teammates.
It's going to be an in-house investigation, that one, and a bit of the knocking of heads together.
It's not a good look for PMR, it's not a good look for their sponsors, it's not a good look for the team, particularly given there's been no suggestion of any problems at that team at all between the two drivers, and there probably isn't any tension between the two drivers, but now this is going to create all kinds of stories, all kinds of...
What, like you're doing now?
But people are going to ask, oh, do they get on? Is there a bit of tension in the team? Is Dogwood upset that Taylor Swift's won all the independent trophies? All these things are going to... Is Taylor Swift getting preferential treatment? Is that why he's qualified better? These are all going to be questions that they'll start to get asked because of this. And the thing is as well, they then carried it on a lap later. Taylor Swift got away with it, went down the field, tumbled back down the order, we don't know why, he might have run wide or whatever. Yeah. And they carried on banging door handles through I was sat coming in the complex.
Yeah.
You could see them all the way through the S's, all over around the back of the circuit. They're banging door handles the rest of the way, and banged door handles into the hairpin.
The fact is, I think it might have already been set out in the team that Aaron Taylor Smith is going for the independent title. Dobble's got the Jack Sears title to focus on, and he nearly missed out on getting that Jack Sears win this weekend because of it.
Yeah. And for Taylor Smith, I think he would have still... No, he lost out on the independent because Chris Smiley won the independents in race 3.
That's true.
I mean, it shouldn't matter too much to Taylor Swift in the grand scheme of things.
No.
We'll do a championship roundup at the very, very end. But it's just not a good look. I suppose, as you say, bang the heads together, so you've got out your systems now. You're right now, lads. You're right. Right, no more of this.
Consequently, though, Turkington managed to get back into the points.
Yeah, which isn't bad, to be fair.
No.
I do feel for Collins. I don't think he's done an awful lot wrong this weekend.
No.
And he's been... Same with Hill, actually. I don't think he's done an awful lot wrong this weekend either. And they've both come off quite badly, particularly in terms of the championship as well. And given the consistency of a couple of the drivers up there, although, flip side of that, Hill hadn't really had a bad weekend coming into this weekend. Maybe Brands
was a difficult one for him, but he was there or thereabouts in the championship.
Yeah.
And he's now, 20 plus points back.
Yeah, though, as Ingram said in race 3, going into race 3 on the grid, he's not going to get excited. This is the touring cars. That gap is nothing.
Yeah. But Chilton took the win.
He did.
Which he was elated about.
Yes, he was.
And yeah, it was a fairly comfortable victory.
Yeah, it never really put any pressure. Carriage couldn't close the gap, so he finished up in second, with Ingram third, second podium of the day for him. Sutton in fourth, Hill in fifth. Slightly surprised Hill didn't make life difficult for Sutton in the closing stage. However, I think, again, sensibility-wise, is there any point? Let's just get this over and go to the next one. Rob Huff in sixth, which capped off a really good display for him.
Did.
Josh Cook seventh, Daniel Robert in eighth, Adam Morgan, best result of the day, and fought back well from the back of the grid. Let's not forget to get into ninth, and Ronan Pearson in 10th. An interesting fact from the weekend, all drivers but one scored points this weekend. Nick Halstead didn't get any points, and I have to say, he was so far off the pace. He was so far back from everybody. It was, not ideal.
No, certainly wasn't.
Shall we get into some predictions and the overall standings before we say goodbye?
Yes, certainly will.
Right, so driver awards for the weekend then. Who is your driver of the day, or driver of the weekend rather?
It was a little bit of a toss-up between two, but I think I'm going to go for Ingram just with the fact that he's come out of this weekend with over a 20-point lead. And it's just that consistency that he's being pointsy.
Yeah, I can understand. I'll go for Camish based on the fact that I think he drove above the car this weekend.
Certainly how he felt the car was
Certainly
anyway.
how he felt. I would also say that he's got similar results to Ingram without being involved in any controversy. Now, obviously, Ingram has been cleared of all controversy. It's all you know, it wasn't found in breach of anything.
I was a little disappointed that he didn't get my point for pole, though.
Yeah. So it's important to point out that Ingram, of course, wasn't found to be at fault for anything. However, Camish, for me, just drove a very, very simple, consistent race without getting involved in anything, which is good sign of a championship contender.
Fair enough. Who is your villain then for the weekend?
I'll go for Osborne. Look, as I said earlier, I'm losing a lot of faith in Osborne, as I say. The car's better than what he's performing. It's as simple as that. Despite what Camish may say, he shouldn't be, in my opinion, he shouldn't be behind Smiley, Sumpton or DeLine at any point of any weekend unless he's been punted off unfairly. Yeah,
and he should also be challenging Dobble at the very least for the Jack Sears.
Yeah, and he's nowhere near.
No. I'm going to have to say Halstead, in more to the fact that he is the only driver that hasn't scored points this weekend, and at no point did it look like he was going to score points this weekend. Whereas De Leon's had a really good, solid weekend despite his penalties.
Yeah. And to be fair to De Leon, that's the experience of a kid. Yeah.
Sumpton scored points, kind of under the radar, hasn't done anything wrong, but was always ahead of Halstead this weekend, and as you say, ahead of Osborne at points. Yeah. It's feeling more of a waste of a seat the more it goes through the season.
We are hopefully, in Halstead's defence, we're now going to tracks that he'll be hopefully more used to through his other. But yeah, look, it's getting hard as the weeks go by. It's getting harder and harder to defend and make excuses for. I accept.
Apart from his merchandise,
the merch is cool. And again, as I will say, his ability to bring in big sponsors,
yes,
is really impressive.
Yeah.
At a time where it's difficult to bring big sponsors to the grid.
Yeah.
But perhaps he'd be better off in a team principal role doing that rather than on the circuit. But anyway, there we go. My surprise good of the weekend is Rob Huff. The Toyotas don't really go that well around here.
No.
Huff has hardly raced here because it's not a track he'd have gone to in other disciplines.
Nope.
Other than the fact that he's now added side by side for the S's to his sort of mental bucket list and checklists of things you can do. I thought he raced really well. You could say he's slightly unlucky not to take the win. I think he was surprised by Cook, and to be fair, he's been done by a really ballsy move, which, in defence of Huff, he had a big smile, so I was saying, yeah, fair play, that's a great move. You know?
Yeah. He likes that good, hard racing.
He's
my surprise of the weekend as well. Surprised good that is. As we mentioned it in the preview, I wasn't expecting Toyota to do really much here.
No.
And yes, okay, they were in the right tyre, on the right tyres in race 2, but the whole weekend was really good and consistent for him.
Absolutely. And then my surprise bad, I've gone for Watson. As I say, I wasn't expecting necessarily great things from Toyota this weekend, but I wasn't expecting just such a nothing performance from Watson. It could have been Moffat as well, to be fair. He could have gone in here for similar reasons. I've just gone for Watson because I suppose technically he's in the main team, maybe.
Well, Moffat took a 10th place this
That's
weekend.
Also true. That is also true.
Whereas Watson, he is also my surprise bad. It doesn't seem to be the pace there that we've seen, certainly last year, obviously, in the Astra, but he's shown signs of it earlier on in the season, and it just doesn't seem to be clicking for him.
And there's no shame in being beaten by a World Touring Car champion who's your teammate, but the gap is getting bigger and bigger.
It is.
And that is a surprise.
And for a driver that hasn't been in the series for 20 years.
Cool. Well, apart from one weekend not killed.
Yeah.
But I take your point.
Yeah.
I take your point. Okay, right, prediction time then. In terms of pole, I went for Rowbottom, you went for Camish, so neither of us get a point.
I was close.
And it's worth pointing out, actually, that I've done all the tables for this today. You are, going into this weekend, a point ahead.
Ooh.
The advert bingo at Alton Park has really helped you out.
Yes.
So you are a point ahead going into the weekend.
Oh, God.
Well, you were.
Oh.
For race winners, you went for Camish, Morgan and Sutton, so a big fat 0 point for you there. I went for Turkington Hill and Sutton, so a point for me there. In terms of Jack Sears, you decided that this was going to be the weekend of Pearson.
It wasn't the weekend of Pearson.
Whereas I backed the favourite in Dobble.
Only
just.
But
I don't care. Only just is still there. So that is another point to me. So that is 2 points to me from those predictions. From the general side of things, you went for BMW to outscore Hyundai, which was not done. No, close.
No.
They took a win, podium.
Many podiums. Yeah.
Unfortunate.
And it wasn't helped with obviously Hyundai biffing off Hill, and Turkington. And yeah, that really hasn't worked out for me, has it?
No, you looked at me as if you were slightly surprised.
No, it makes more sense now.
Yeah. You also went for a PMR to have a double top 10 finish, which didn't quite happen.
Not quite.
Double scored 2 11s, which is
I know. I thought it was going to happen possibly in race 1, obviously with Taylor Smith being so far up the grid to start the weekend. I thought, okay, it's looking promising, but no.
You also went for one of the top 4 to miss out on the Super 6, which you were correct on. Jake Hill didn't get there, so you're absolutely right on this. You do get a point, so well done you. I went for all of the top 4, so that was Turkington, no, that was Camish, sorry. Camish, Hill, Ingram and Sutton to score a podium. Not quite.
Nope.
Osborne to outscore the Cupras of DeLion and Smiley.
Not quite.
No, they outscored by a single point, and to be fair, I had absolutely,
shouldn't have been close.
I had absolutely no right to still have this as a possibility going into the final race. And DeLion's 10-second penalties really did help me out on those.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I also went for Chilton to outscore Morgan, which he did with ease.
Really?
Ease this weekend, so that is a point for me. We then had chicane cuts, which is through the first chicane out of turn 1 complex. I went for 4 cuts, you went for 11. We have both agreed there were 9 overall.
Yeah, so there were 4 on the first race.
Yeah.
Which you would have been very lucky to keep hold of.
Yeah.
But yeah, it averaged itself out with 9 across the weekend.
Which means that coming into the weekend, or coming into the round, sorry, you had 17 and I had 16. However, I now have 19 and you now have 18. So nice and close as we go up to Knock Hill.
We need to sharpen those predictions, especially the race ones, for Knock Hill going forward. But yeah, it's always competitive.
Any closing remarks on Croft that you'd like to get off your chest?
We're going to cover the tyres elsewhere, so I won't mention those. I think it was a good competitive weekend, even if some of the decisions by the stewards were a little questionable. Everyone is...
based on what we've seen.
Yes, based on what we've seen. Everyone is able to have their own opinion on that, and we would love to hear yours. We've already had interaction on social media discussing the ins and outs of what we think was fair, what other people think was fair. But it's always good to hear from you. If you haven't already, subscribe, because there still are people out there watching us that aren't subscribed. Have you got anything else to add?
It was hot.
It's still hot.
It is still hot. Knock Hill next, which is my second favourite circuit. It's probably the most fun I've had going to a circuit, I have to say. We're not going this year because it's just,
a long way.
Well, a long way, a lot of money for us.
Yeah.
But of course, if you were to like, subscribe and share, we might start getting sponsorship, which is another reason to ring those bells. As I say, I think the title is wide open. It is too close to call. As we go into Knock Hill weekend, Tom Ingram does lead. He has a 21-point gap over Jake Hill, who's in second. Sutton is in third, with Dan Camage 4th, Josh Cook 5th, and Colin Turkington 6th. Yeah,
so 75 points cover those top 6 drivers. We think that Turkington is very on the edge of being
I think he's out
of it.
I think he's out of it personally.
Especially if he's going to get biffed off like he did.
Camish is just about holding on, and he's 41 points back. I think he's just about holding on. In the Manufacturers Alliance leads that. In the teams, Napa leads that. In the Independent Driver, Aaron Taylor Smith leads up only by 21 points over Mikey Doble, so maybe that's why the contact happened. And then in the BTC Independence teams, Evan Halshaw are winning that by 60 points over Restar. And then in the Jack Sears, we have Mikey Doble leading the way. He now has a 69-point gap.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
I certainly thought the Jack Sears was going to be a lot closer contest this season, but Doble has shone above and really taken it by the scruff of the neck.
Osborne is 107 points back in third, and DeLion is 129 points back. So DeLion is actually not far off Osborne.
No. ridiculous, isn't it?
Okay, we will. Right, Knock Hill next. Thank you ever so much for bearing with us with the heat. Have a good week until we get to Knock Hill. We'll of course bring you the Knock Hill preview in due course. As Sam has said, make sure you like our socials, interact with us, leave comments, whatever you want to do. We try and respond to comments on Facebook and Instagram when time allows.
And YouTube.
And YouTube, yeah, I've tasked you with that now as well. We have, of course, got a TikTok account which we would ask or recommend you sign up to. There are reactions, memes, all those kind of bits and pieces. The more jokier side of the British Touring Car podcast. We will try and get some more content on there throughout the bigger gaps in the season. YouTube wise, we've got 2 top 5 videos out. Go and check those out. If you like those, we'll make more in the sort of the longer periods we have off. As you say, a top 10 to follow. So there's literally 7 or 8 reasons there to follow us and to make sure you've got all your subscribe buttons clicked.
Yeah, but until next time, stay safe, and we will be back with you for a preview for Knock Hill.